Hello everyone, my name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. I hope that everyone's having a nice Friday. Congratulations, pat yourself on the back. You made it through yet another work week. I'm very proud of you, in case you need to hear that. There's been a ton of stuff that's been ongoing throughout the world, just a ton of it, especially in the country of Ukraine, where we've seen really big developments when it comes to the Kharkiv Oblast counteroffensive, as well as just overall good things happening throughout the war. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff too, and really it is kind of just a tragedy all around, being as it is a war, and wars in general are just kind of terrible, no matter what good or bad you're fighting for. It's just terrible one no matter how you look at it. It's just not a good thing. In fact, a lot of things that make the news in general are not good things, and that's why we actually look for stuff at the end of the day for you guys to try to be a little bit more uplifting or interesting, because it's a lot of depressing stuff. It's a lot of people suffering all around for a lot of terrible reasons. You're talking about things such as war and conflict, or you're talking about other stuff. You're talking about things like climate change. You're talking about severe droughts and famine and everything else. It's just a lot of pretty bad stuff. So luckily you guys as a community allow us to be the news that gives back, and that's really the important thing here. That's 100% about what this is all about. We're never doing super chats on this channel. We're never pushing merchandising. That will never be a thing. In fact, when we have the ability to, we will have a fundraiser on every single stream we do without failure. Every single stream, specifically looking to try and help through whatever groups have an impact on the major topic of the night. That's really kind of what we're like shooting for. But until then, you can certainly help out and run the less and be the news and help us be the news that gives back by checking out the video description. If you check out the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different organizations. Down there, they are covering a wide variety of topics. A lot of different things are down there, whether you're talking about the war in Ukraine, which we of course have plenty for, including the United 24 Fund, Come Back Alive, Ripley's Heroes. And you check all that out down there. Or if you want something else, if you want to help with situations maybe in the Horn of Africa, whether you're talking about the really terrible drought and famine that's ongoing there as a result of climate change and just really bad weather season or terrible seasons for crop harvesting and whatnot, you can. We have stuff for Somalia and Ethiopia. And if you want to help out with the situations ongoing in reconstruction from the typhoon season of last year there in Southeast Asia, we have stuff for that as well. And we're constantly expanding that. In fact, there's about 4 or 5 that we are currently going through and vetting right now to make sure that everything is good. One of which being my favorite pooch, Patron, who is he has a fundraiser right now to help animals throughout Ukraine with those kind of humanitarian efforts. So because a lot of people's pets had to be left behind. So we're vetting a bunch of different stuff right now to try and make sure all of that has been submitted by you guys as the community, which I cannot thank enough for. We want to be able to help people on every inch of this planet if possible, and the only way we can do that is through you guys. 80% or more of all the donations that these organizations in the description receive go to their programs, meaning they do not go to paying things such as salaries, administration's costs, marketing, or what have you. 80% go to helping people or more in most cases. So please be sure to check them all out. I implore you to check out not just Ukraine, but other areas that just aren't getting nearly as much funding or support as a result of them just not being the highlight in the news every day. These people are suffering just as equally. In fact, according to the United Nations, there are more refugees and internally displaced people in the world right now than at any other point in recorded human history. So it's very important that we try and put a little bit of good back into this world. And if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. Help us grow this channel. This project only runs because of you guys. And the only way that we are going to be able to do even more good throughout this world is to grow this project. So if you guys can, like, subscribe, let your friends know about us, share us on some Discord communities, Reddit, what have you. And in fact, you can even go onto our social media sites and on our Discord and hang out there too, and share, like us, follow us, share our stuff too. That we post on there. It helps us tremendously, and the more people that see this, the more people that come here and watch the news every day, the more of an impact we will have. We'll be able to put fundraisers on the streams. We'll be able to raise a lot of money through those, and hopefully do something tangibly good throughout this world, and hopefully be able to put a little bit of hope back into a lot of people's lives. And that's really what we want to do here. So thank you very much for the support you've already given us. We're over 200 subscribers now. Last I checked, it was at 203, which is pretty wild to me. I never thought we'd ever get to this point. It is a we thing because not only is it you guys, but it's also we have a team here that puts this together. It's not just myself, and I want to make that very clear. I'm simply the one that lends my voice and now my face to this project. I am just I cannot believe kind of how far this project has come. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey so far. I never thought we'd even reach to this point, and you guys have really exceeded that those goals that we have had. It's been an amazing development, and I just simply cannot forget. Or I simply cannot say thank you enough. I really just can't. It's been amazing. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And you guys are really the driving force behind this, as well as these charities. Whether it's 1 or a million, we will always be, or whether we're viewing for 1 or a million people, we will always be charity driven. So thank you very much for allowing us to be this way. And with that, as we're getting ready to roll into the news, I implore you to ask questions. We are doing this live, and so please ask questions here if you happen to be watching live with me. I am watching the chat, and I will answer questions and comments to the best of my ability. I have knowledge in a wide range of topics, but I'm also a subject matter expert in a couple of them. So I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I was a corporal, and I served with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I was an O-352 anti-tank missileman, which means I operated the TOW launcher system, or the M41A7 Sabre system, and I also operated the Javelin weapon system. So those are my 2 weapon systems. I'm also fully cross-trained as a machine gunner, so I have operated every machine gun in the Marine Corps arsenal, to include the M249 SAW, M240 Bravo, Mark 19, and M50 cal. And I've also deployed twice. I did my first deployment to Syria back in 2017-2018, where I spent 4.5 months. In Kuwait, I spent about 1.5 months there on that first tour. In my second deployment, I was there. I oversaw anti-armor operations at the Baghdad Embassy compound during the Baghdad Embassy protests in years of 2020, and I also trained Saudi Arabian Marines in the Red Sea, as well as operated with crisis response with the crisis response company out of Kuwait. So I am a subject matter expert in anti-armor operations and armor doctrines, specifically those of enemy or hostile or near peer countries, to include Russia and China. So everything else outside of that, like level of stuff, I will give you my best guess, but I do not have, I'm not an expert in anything, so I do implore you, no matter what I say, expert or not, to please do your own research. You cannot believe whatever someone says on the internet. I just hope that I can kind of point you in the correct direction here. And with that, we immediately begin the news as we roll into here and into Ukraine. And the first thing that we start off with is actually up here in Kyiv, which is where we start off every night. But we actually enter to the northeast of Kyiv, northwest, sorry. And this is in Moshchun. Unfortunately, a rather gruesome discovery was made up here in Moshchun. The head of the chief of regional police was found here in Moshchun. It appears that he was executed by Russian occupational forces during the occupation of these areas prior to the withdrawal of Russian forces from the northern sectors and the consolidation of their troops in the south and in the east. So we do have a little bit of video. It is blurred out for you guys, but this is the when they discovered it. It was just found in like a small hole in the ground. Well, what was left of it, that is. Take a look. So, very short, but it doesn't need to be too lengthy. That work will continue for a very, very long time, and as more and more places become liberated, unfortunately, more and more shocking news and very gruesome news, I'm sure, will be coming out in the future. Now, Ed Kelly asks, are the Americans giving Ukrainians the coordinates for some of the drone strikes? So that's the thing. We can assume so, but that's simply an assumption. Nobody. There are people obviously that know that, but that would be very much compartmentalized information. You have unclassified and for public release, and then you have for official use only, and then you have, which is technically classified, and then you have classified, then you have secret, and then you have top secret, and then you have technically there's the only other thing is compartmentalized, which is so dangerous that it has to be broken up into very small chunks, and only certain people know certain chunks. Basically, that's kind of how it works. It's way beyond what anyone here is going to know, far beyond me. Based off of what we've seen off of flight radars and the types of aircraft that are maneuvering within NATO airspace, we can assume that some kind of intelligence is being given to the Ukrainians, and that will probably also include satellite imagery and other things. The Department of Defense, specifically Admiral Kelly, who is the one, or former Admiral Kelly, I should say, who's a spokesman of the Department of Defense, has been very clear. He has avoided all of those questions and has simply said, we will not disclose all of the types of things that we were going to, or that we give to the Ukrainians based off of operational security. And that should be the case. It shouldn't be, it's very well known that the United States is very highly involved, but we simply don't need to know those things, and we're not going to know those things. We don't even know everything that Ukraine's been sent. We didn't even know that the HARM missile had been sent to Ukraine. It never was disclosed until all of a sudden pieces of HARM missile started popping up on the internet from inside the battle space in Ukraine. So there's a lot more than meets the eye to these things. Always has been, always will be. And I can tell you for sure that there is probably a lot more involvement that we just don't know about, and that goes in many aspects of this war, not just intelligence gathering, not just in the stuff that's being given, that is being publicly listed as being given to them. There's just a ton of stuff, a lot of behind closed doors stuff that's happening that we as the public and anybody, even former, of course, is not going to know about. So we just can't comment on that. We just don't have the answer. But I can safely assume so, just based off of effectiveness. Numbers add up, and when it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, smells like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. As we jump over here into Kyiv itself proper, we see that Ukraine has awarded Baykar the Order of Merit. And it says, quote, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with the CEO of Turkish arms maker Baykar Haluk Bayraktar and Kyiv, and discussed further cooperation with the company, which has supplied Bayraktar combat drones to Ukraine. They also discussed plans to build a Baykar plant in Ukraine, which is looking at actually building some of those autonomous jets. And once again, he awarded the CEO the Order of Merit and thanks both Baykar, Turkish President Erdogan, and the people of Turkey for the support. Initially, we were getting this from the Kyiv Independent, and then, of course, we have a nice photo. And there it is. That is the CEO of Baykar, Hakur Bayraktar there, and seems pretty nice. So, pretty cool. The Bayraktar really was, you have many points in this war where a lot of symbols have come to place. You have the Javelin and the In-Law, which really took their place and solidified Ukraine's ability to hunt down Russian armored vehicles. That really solidifies that. You have the Bayraktar symbolizing the power and effectiveness of equipment that's been sent to them by other countries, and the effectiveness of destroying Russian logistics. The HIMARS, which has become a symbol, of course, the Ghost of Kyiv, which really idealizes the effectiveness of the Ukrainian Air Force, which still is flying and is being very, very effective. And we're not seeing nearly as many losses on their side as well. So there's been a lot of idealizing of different pieces of equipment and their effectiveness. The Bayraktar had a huge morale booster. I think even that is even more important in a lot of ways than the effectiveness of the weapon system. The effectiveness of the weapon system needs to be worth it, but the morale booster it gave Ukraine, especially on, say, the convoys to the north of Kyiv, and the effectiveness that it had on the ground combined, really, really solidified Bayraktar in their sales for sure. Their marketing team is probably ecstatic right now, but they are, it has a good effect on people, and that's what you want to see in a war for those morale boosters. You don't want people losing hope. So these are just a few things that are illegal, in case you're wondering. Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian troops have destroyed 127 and damaged 826 medical institutions in Ukraine. That's coming from the press service of the Ministry of Healthcare of Ukraine. So medical institutions are kind of like one of the only things in the entire Geneva Convention, across the board of the Geneva Convention, that's been protected and explicitly stated to be protected numerous times, unfathomable amount of times. If you were to go through the conventions and their articles, and you were to click F, Control F, to search, and you put in medical or healthcare, you would immediately probably get hundreds of results throughout the document. And you're talking about, close to 1,000 medical institutions either completely destroyed or damaged. That's not precision, in case anyone's wondering. Precision strikes don't blow up hospitals on the regular, in case you're wondering how well that goes. That's unfathomable. And that just shows you the blatant disregard for the Russians when it comes to the Geneva Conventions and their willingness to operate in a war capacity that complies with modern standards of warfare. And it shows you truly horrific, and how much so they have really delved deep into that ideology of the scorched earth tactics of the elimination of Ukraine. And that is just absolutely abhorrent to think about, because if you're wounded and the hospital is destroyed, where do you go? Who do you call for help? You can't. There's nowhere to go. This wouldn't be the first time the Russians showed their willingness to kill first responders and to destroy their facilities in 2016 during the bombing of Aleppo, where they used BM-21 Grad systems as well as aircraft with their aerospace forces to shell locations. They would allow for a tactical pause to allow rescue workers to deem it safe to go and assist people, and then they would shell the white hats while they were out there trying to save people's lives. We also get a child casualty update here in Ukraine. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 383 Ukrainian children have died. 743 children have been injured. Most of the victims among children are from the Donetsk region. That comes from the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine. As we jump over here and we start to move into Kharkiv, I don't know if you can notice this, but there is a ton of dots here. It's a ton of it. And we will continue probably to see a ton of dots here for some time as this counteroffensive continues. And as we jump over here, sorry, I was reading the chat a little bit. So the Russian forces have shelled Kharkiv pretty badly. Kharkiv gets shelled every day. Don't get that twisted. Kharkiv gets shelled daily by Iskander-M missile systems and S-300 batteries out of Belgorod. But this shelling was really bad. They shelled downtown Kharkiv, and it completely covered the skyline with plumes of smoke. It's been one of the most serious shellings of a major city for quite some time now, really since Kremenchuk. At this point, rocket attacks on Kharkiv on September 9th. 14 people were injured, including 3 children. Local private houses, a kindergarten, a gas station, a school, and an object for the sports infrastructure were damaged. And that's coming from Ihor Torekov, who is the mayor of the city of Kharkiv. You can take a look at some of this here. This is coming from the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. This is the official photos that they have released regarding this attack. I mean, look at this. Does this look like a military target to you? Does it look like this has ever been used as a military target to you? Or this? A playground? With a bomb crater in the middle of it? Or this apartment building? With the cars still stuck out front? Does any of this look like a military target to you? How about these photos where we can see them detonating next to apartment buildings and across the city? Take a look.
Ебать, переебать, что тут творится?
Or this one. Downtowns and cities are military targets, guys, apparently. This is the thing. Being a civilian population, being a highly concentrated civilian population, under the Geneva Convention does not automatically grant you clemency from attacks. It doesn't. It does not. You can attack civilian populations. You can attack the cities. You can't attack the people, though, purposefully. But even the Geneva Convention understands collateral damage will happen in a war. Even the Geneva Convention understands that that innocent loss of life in a war is nigh unavoidable. It cannot happen. You cannot avoid collateral damage of civilian infrastructure and of people being killed, innocent people being killed, to include children. Egregious, horrific, yes, but you can't avoid it. Even the Geneva Convention understands that, and it has parameters to make that understanding very clear, that distinction very, very clear. The difference is that under Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention, you cannot use a means or a method or purposefully plan for an attack that will cause an extreme amount of civilian casualties, that disregards the means and methods of warfare to limit civilian casualties, and that you chose a military target it was the most advantageous of a military target, meaning that military targets in out areas other than the city and where collateral damage and civilian loss of life could have taken place, that you didn't just choose that military target out of wanting to, that it actually played a much more strategic role and a much more important role than, say, any of the other targets on the outside of the city. That is something that you have to take into account. You cannot shell cities relentlessly, bomb them into oblivion, and say it's a military target. Cities are not a military target. There may be military targets in a city, but not the city themselves. That is the distinction. You have to use a means and a methods that limit collateral damage and civilian losses of life. Essentially, using Iskander and ballistic missiles to carpet bomb a city daily is not limiting collateral damage. It is not using a means or method of war that limits collateral damage. This is not the 1940s anymore. We have munitions in the world right now that you can fire from a drone or from across the world. The HIMARS missile, perfect example, the HIMARS. It will land a missile at, tens of kilometers away. In some cases, upwards of 300 kilometers away. It will land a missile between me and my camera. That is how accurate the HIMARS system is. Those weapons exist. There is weaponry from from drones that can be fired, and it will just destroy the room in a house. It was used against the second in command, now commander, or was commander until he died, of Al-Qaeda in Kabul. We had images of it here. And this one, this account is calling out Amnesty International regarding the reports because they stated that Ukraine was, putting civilians at risk. Did you see even a scrap of clothing? A single round? A shell casing? A patch? Inside of that elementary school? Inside of that classroom? On the playground? You didn't. You did not. That is the difference. That is the difference. Once again, the Geneva Convention understands that cities are strategic targets. They can be, they always have been, they always will be. Cities are strategic, valid military targets. They are. Horrific as it may be, but they're important in a war. But you have to be careful about how you fight in them. Because completely disregarding the Geneva Conventions, especially the Fourth Geneva Convention, which specifically is what this one pertains to, is also known as the Genocide Conventions. It's meant to prevent genocide on a scale similar to that of the Holocaust. To disregard those conventions is to disregard the idea that you are committing genocide, and is to admit to committing genocide. That's not the only place where shelling hit. Explosions reported here in Chuihiv as well. Chuihiv continues to be shelled as Russian forces simply, this is where their artillery can hit because they can't hit Kharkiv. Take a look. So that is what we have. Reportedly explosions there in Chuihiv. And something that has come out today is the immense amount of Ukrainian forces that are involved in this operation. It's been a long time since we've seen a concentration of Ukrainian troops this large in one area, really in the entirety of this war. We know that there are big numbers fighting here in Ukraine, that's for sure, on both sides. But this really kind of helps you grasp that. Take a look. This is just insane. This is Ukrainian forces as they're getting ready to go out here. This is on the beginning. This is right before the Kharkiv counteroffensive, reportedly. And this is what they did before the counteroffensive took place. Once again, part of their preparation. I tried to find a full thing for this because if there was ever a fitting replacement to the intro for our stuff right now, since we are leading in Ukraine when it comes or since we are leading with Ukraine when it comes to the news, I tried to find a full video of this because this really symbolizes just how far we've come. If you watch the intro to this, you'll notice that video is actually taken in Kharkiv in March. That was in Kharkiv by a band unit in the Ukrainian Armed Forces. That's the intro, and that was in the middle of the fighting in March. That's when our intro video was taking place, and I thought it was very fitting considering the situation. Now things have changed so dramatically that I think that this probably better represents what Ukraine is doing now. And how the tone of the war has changed. Take a look. Unfortunately, it does cut off right there, but that is, but that is how they began. So that's coming reportedly from about the 4th or the 5th, right before the counteroffensive began here in the Kharkiv Oblast, as those Ukrainian forces are getting ready to set off on, for many of them, unfortunately, what would become their last endeavor, because many of them are going to give, and still are currently giving, the last measure of what many would call the last measure of devotion to their country and to the liberation of these areas from the Russian forces. Over here in Balaklia, which was been recently captured, it was officially announced yesterday as captured, or recaptured. So it has been liberated. Here it's it was actually liberated pretty much about a full 24 hours ahead of time. It was just, these things are getting delayed. A lot of information you're going to see regarding the front lines is delayed. Some of that's for operational security reasons. Some of that's because these areas are just getting liberated and maybe just getting some of that internet signal back. It just doesn't matter. And also, my first thought in the world as I'm in a war zone on the front lines, and probably the most kinetic part of the war zone, is to pull out my phone, take a video, and upload it immediately to Twitter. Not my first thought when it comes to mine. I certainly don't have any video footage of anything that I was doing. I just have stuff that before and after, generally speaking. But take a look. This is returning to sender. So Ukrainian forces uncovered a huge warehouse, and there's a ton of ammunition that is right there. And the thing is that, like all unwanted deliveries that you may receive, the Ukrainians plan that expect that these need to be returned to sender. Take a look. So that's the warehouse right there. And look at that ammo stockpile. Look at that stockpile. Look at all that Soviet ammunition that's been dug from the depths. Wow. Just boxes upon boxes upon boxes. Very effective. So, yeah, they'll be returning that to sender. And as we jump up here, we get an update from President Volodymyr Zelensky himself. Quote, at this time, the armed forces of Ukraine liberated and took control of more than 30 settlements in the Kharkiv region. Once again, that's coming from President Zelensky. We actually have the Twitter for that. So he does have like a 2-minute speech. We're not going to listen to that, but if you actually translate it, at this time, the armed forces of Ukraine liberated and took control of more than 30 settlements in the Kharkiv region. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And so I'm seeing a lot of stuff here in the chat, so we're going to jump over here real quick. And they said, Nuclear says, wow, Kherson was quite literally the distraction. Big John Scott, big brain plan. Nuclear, and now the Russian forces in Kherson, they have no choice but to stay committed on that front. If they take Kherson, that's a great place to hold a defensive position on the bank of the river. And then Nuclear says, where would Russia manage to recross? I think that most of the bridges are gone. All that's left is a small bridge connected to the dam. We'll get to some of the free stuff here in a moment, guys. So when it comes to the Kherson Oblast, it seems that it may have been a distraction. I don't think so. I think it just happened to be... I just think that it happens to be a target of opportunity. I think that they poked and prodded enough. They found a hole. They were conducting some operations to kind of set conditions. When they did clearly say that, like they did clearly say, and most international intelligence agencies also said, Ukraine's setting conditions. This isn't the true counter. They're just shaping the battle space, I think is how they quoted it. Now, but over here by David Reed, we saw them cross the Inhalets River because the 109th Mechanized Rifle Regiment of the DPR broke. I mean, they just broke. They shelled this area for like a full night, and then the VDV paratroopers of the Russian regulars that were on their flank pretty much just kind of dipped out and left them exposed, and that opened up a gap in the line that just got exploited. And that's really what you see across the front. Is there was some shaping. Vysokoupia had been nearly completely encircled for some time prior to its capture. So you're just kind of seeing some dominoes falling, and they're shaping the battle space. Novokakhovka Bridge, as Nuclear was pointing out, there isn't a small bridge that crosses here anymore. It has completely collapsed, and that's something that we actually shared on some prior news streams there. The Antonovsky Bridge is completely destroyed. There is no crossing the Antonovsky Bridge. They have to ferry across, or they have to bring it in via aircraft. We also know that both the pontoon bridge and the main bridge over here at Dorivka have also been destroyed. So it cuts off not just north and south, but also east and west. Sorry. So that's kind of the situation there. So there's not really any way to cross it but on ferry. So you're not getting the quantity of supplies and reinforcements and equipment needed to replenish the losses you're taking. It's a war of attrition that the Russians are going to lose regardless. There is no tactically advantageous position that they have there at the moment. There is none that they can maintain there in the Kherson Oblast. It's just time. They're quite literally buying time with blood right now and trying to plug. They're trying to use cork to plug holes in a sinking ship. It's like trying to use a bucket to save the Titanic. It's just not going to work. But, see, if you remember the beginning of the war, there was a wonderful video of a Ukrainian babushka, or grandmother, telling a Russian soldier, at this point they were still having rules of engagement for the Russians before it turned into a free fire zone. The Russians were sitting there, and this Ukrainian babushka walked up to him and was cussing him out and saying how he's going to die here, which he probably has. And she said, she quite literally threw sunflower seeds at him and told him to fill your pockets. So that's the Ukrainians receiving Russian soldiers. Here's how the Ukrainians are receiving their troops upon liberation. Quote, as 30 villages have been liberated, we're seeing countless videos of Ukrainian civilians coming out of shelter to greet Ukrainian troops. This is not an authoritarian Nazi regime. Civilians were pretty happy to see Ukrainian troops near their homes, and they're willing to give away any food that they have left to the soldiers who are liberating them in many cases. Take a look. Oh. There we go.
Это мы только освобожденная деревня. Люди в панике. Це Україна, Україна!
А що за село, хоч скажи?
Александровка. И пятая машина, наш земляк, вот живет через огород, даже домой не и домой даже не заехал.
Заедет.
Ребята, слава Украине, спасибо
Слава.
вам, пацаны.
Все буде Україна, все буде Україна.
Все буде Україна, все буде Україна, спасибо.
Щасливо, щасливо. Дякуємо, дякуємо. Это
Все добре, все добре.
Молодцы! Мы коллегу пели в подвал сегодня.
Дякую вам, дякую.
Молилися, щоб ви до нас повернулися. Сил не було. Діти тут ще з нами, внуки мої. Я так вас нікуди, що ви до нас прийшли.
Ви на всяк випадок все посидіть, будь ласка, в підвалі, будь ласка, тому що може бути ще обстріли. Но ми вже тут, вже все добренько.
Спасибо, мальчики.
Ні, там вже все.
На салаті осталися. Будете?
Трішечки
Слава Україні! Да, свої.
Pretty amazing to just see this, and it's just over and over and over and over and over again. This is not a. These are people who have endured occupation for so long. And we know what Russian occupation is like because we've seen the Russian occupation in other locations such as Sumy and Chernihiv and Kiev. And we've seen it in other liberated areas as well. That the Russian occupation, that it's just a terrible thing to endure. But as we continue, we begin to move towards the front. And despite there not being a marker here, it's pretty clear that Shevchenkove has been taken. It's been liberated. I mean, it's clear because the Ukrainians have pushed so far past it that you can't just bypass that. In fact, as we continue here, here's interesting news. A Gaz-51 was captured. For those that don't know, the Gaz-51 is based off of the US GMC truck that was given via the Lend-Lease program to the Soviet Union during World War II. The Soviets then took this, basically built a version of their own called the Gaz-51, which went into production initially between 1946 and 1955, and then it had an upgrade that only ran until 1975. Well, Gaz-51 was captured with invasion markings here in the Kharkiv Oblast, marking and signifying that the Russians are in fact using them for their military needs. This thing belongs in a museum. It belongs in a museum. This thing has been running since at least, at the newest 1975. Let alone if it's even older than that, likely from the 50s, where the majority of the production was made for these vehicles. Or even the 40s, which is possible. A Gaz-51 being used to transport logistical infrastructure by the Russian Federation in Ukraine. That tells you how badly the Russian logistical infrastructure is. Just the significant amount of losses. They did not, keep in mind, they did not have enough logistical vehicles to run 15 battalion tactical groups simultaneously. They only had about 2/3 of what they needed. And the thing is that they have taken quite significant losses to the vehicles that they did have. They are desperate enough to pull out equipment from the 40s, 50s, and 60s just to keep things moving. Just to try and bring supplies. And even now you can see that even those are becoming captured. Let's jump over here. Nuclear says there's also a chance they were DPR/LPR troops and they were given third-hand equipment. Nuclear, that would make sense, except we've seen them using the ZIL and the KAMAZ. And also the KAMAZ is like one of the most major like military truck manufacturers in this like section of the world. Specifically for the Russians and also for the Chinese. Yeah, they're not just this. That just means they're running low. Regardless of who it is, because they've been getting newer stuff. Even the LPR and the DPR have newer stuff. You can pull a truck from a civilian factory and it would be newer. Anyway, here we are. This is Kupyansk, and as you can see, this is the opening of Kupyansk. That's the sign right there for you. These are Ukrainians, at least at the very outskirts of Kupyansk. We do not know if they have taken the city or not. We do not know. What we do know is that there has been some kind of fighting in and around there. But we do not believe that it has been totally taken. We do believe they pushed far enough in to say otherwise. But see, Doug Wald. But yeah, as we can see here, some of the explosions. Doug, I'll get to your question here in a second. I'm sorry. We can also see that there is obviously some fighting ongoing on the outskirts, or at least some shelling of Russian positions. Now, Doug Wald says, Musk has provided over 10,000 Starlink terminals to Ukraine, I believe, at no cost. I've seen stories that the Ukrainian army has been putting them to great tactical use. Have you covered this here? Thanks. So we have talked about, and also thank you, Aravis, for pointing that out. I also haven't, I'm trying to do two things at once, so I apologize, guys, if I missed something. So, Doug, we have covered the Starlink. We have covered the fact that the Starlink is being used. I believe is in one of our earlier streams. But the thing is that the likelihood that it's being used for a tactical purpose on a wide scale for larger operations is probably very minimal. The Starlink is good if you need an internet connection. But the thing is that things like that, if it is something like that, civilian grade stuff, and I'm not saying Elon Musk doesn't have encryption and everything else on some of these things, those Starlink systems are more to give people in areas that do not have things like electricity, they do not have, ways to talk to home or anything like that. It's to give them the ability to do so with an internet connection, because if you have the internet, then you can do anything you need. And so that's kind of the majority of the point of those 10,000 systems. We saw occasionally Starlinks being used for other purposes. We saw it out of the Azovstal with the Starlink system. And she was. So we kind of see that kind of level of stuff. But actual military stuff is probably not going to be done on a Starlink. It's just too much of a risk and there's too much of a possibility that it's too unsecure, and that very important information could be taken from the Starlink system and used against you, whether that's tactical planning or anything else. The first thing they did, if there was an incident when I was overseas, is they immediately pulled the Morale Sat or the Morale Satellite uplinks that we had because of these reasons and for many other reasons. It's just not good. It's not a good tactical choice. There are much better things of communication to use, and we see the Ukrainians using those quite extensively. We see a lot of radio usage and a lot of encrypted radio usage. The Russians not so much, as we've heard here, where we're picking up non-encrypted frequencies on their chatter from Baofangs. So what have you. So that's kind of the situation with that. They have them. They do use them in some cases. Like I said, at the Azovstal is a perfect example of where they did indeed use the Starlink. But the majority of those systems are being used to help civilian population and keeping communications with their family and friends throughout the globe, to let them know they're okay and to get the help that they may need. The bridge here in Kupyansk has reportedly also been destroyed as Ukrainian forces are pushing here. This is going to prevent Russian forces from crossing over into the river and into the main part of the city. And this is the overhead footage of the bridge. And we actually do have up-close footage of the bridge as well. So this is reportedly the bridge across the Oskil River here in Kupyansk. Yeah, not good. If you're a Russian, that's a really bad sign, because unless you're crossing down here in the south, that means that pretty much Kupyansk is, for the most part, almost completely encircled and cut off. So Kupyansk probably not going to be in Russian hands much longer, if it even still is. There's a good possibility. We're hearing rumors right now, and keep in mind, rumors, not news, rumors. That we are hearing right now that the Russian forces are abandoning their positions in Kupyansk. We do not know the extent that may be true, but that is something that we have been hearing. There's a lot of rumors that are flying around the Kharkiv counteroffensive. There's rumors about fighting in all sorts of weird areas to include that. We're going on. We're basing a lot of this on. We're basing what we have is on fact. Oh, Jesus. Nuclear, your quotes are just killing me, man. If you end up watching the live chat replay, if you're watching this after the live stream, then some of Nuclear's quotes are absolutely fantastic lines. The situation is that here with this, that there's a lot of rumors and there's a lot of maps circulating. Some of them are pretty good. I mean, they're pretty good maps. Like nothing against their content creators, but we like to go off of physical video evidence, and we like to cross-reference with multiple things. The Institute for the Study of War, for instance, which is run by officers, prior service officers as well, which is, they're very thorough in their stuff. They have a lot of wealth of knowledge. We find that, I find anyway, personally, that the information that they are releasing is relatively delayed and probably is very conservative in its scope. Perfectly okay to be much more conservative than liberal with your estimates when it comes to a war. And that the UA live map, which many people like to reference, that I find that to be very liberal in its estimates of gains and losses, and that while in many cases it does have video or photo evidence, also there's just not enough there, or I don't like the fact that one source is kind of reporting everything. I like to pull from multiple sources to collaborate stories from both official and unofficial sources, independent sources. I don't like I'll go to the Ministry of Defense and then we'll go and take a look at whatever we're seeing. And okay, Ukrainian Ministry of Defense is saying this. We have video footage of this. Bam. Marries up the story. Cool. We have proof. We have rhetoric from an official source. Cool. It all lines up. It's fantastic. So rumors are going to be flying about this. Please keep a level head and try and not let those get to you. If you're hearing like this place has been captured and this place, just see if you have evidence. We have evidence through the sign. We have evidence that there's shelling. We do not know if Kupyansk has been taken. We have evidence that the bridge may be destroyed. Once again, the words supposedly, reportedly, possibly are going to be very heavily used in many of these contexts. It's a very fluid and very confusing situation. Clarifique is asking, is Russia still firing artillery rockets, etc., from within Belarus? We don't have a whole lot of proof of any of that. We don't have anything to say that they are. There's a possibility that there have been Russian aircraft ballistic missile launches or cruise missile launches that have occurred from within Belarusian border since the withdrawal out of Belarus. Belarus, really, most of the concentrations of Russian forces left Belarus, and then Belarusian troops went to the border for military exercises. Keep in mind that's the same term that was used for the entire buildup of this invasion. So there's still contingents of troops up here in like Lviv and stuff that are kind of holding this front. But we're not really seeing any action out of Belarus at all. The only major action that's occurring from within Russia is both military transportation of equipment into these fronts, and you have a lot of action out of Belgorod just because of its proximity to Kharkiv and to the front lines here. And it's a very strategically important city, and it's also it's within range of S-300 missile batteries and also Iskander-M missile batteries. And it's absolutely hilarious to watch them screw it up too. But as we continue here, this is from the Russian perspective. This is the wrong point of view. You do not want to be in this BMP. You do not want to be in this BMP. This is one dead BMP. This is what it looks like to be hit with an anti-tank guided missile. Take a look. You do not want to be in that. You do not want to be in that BMP. You do not. I'm not going to go any further because of it gets a little bit graphic. But the thing of that, it's not anti-tank guided missiles aren't going to produce a lot of shrapnel. It's just going to punch through the tank. Now the gunner is probably dead. That's probably pretty safe to say the gunner, and I'd probably say the driver, and anyone inside the vehicle and not just out the hatch is probably dead. Pretty dead. But yeah, that's what it's like to be on the wrong end or the receiving end of an anti-tank guided missile. Remember, no disintegrations. So the Wagner Group, which is a Russian mercenary organization, please don't get me started on them with asking questions. I really do not have very many nice things to say about the Wagner Group of Ukraine. Only they met the Ukrainian armed forces. All that's left is a barrel that says Wagner. They didn't do so hot. I'm pretty sure the Wagner Group got their asses kicked, actually. You know, it's a lot easier to identify the tank, too, if the tank isn't in pieces. Ooh. Dougwald says, thank you very much for answering the questions. About answering my question about Starlink. I appreciate it. It's very cool to be acknowledged so quickly by an outstanding stream run by an honorable veteran. Thanks, Paul. Hoorah. Hoorah. or yacht. Not. I'm sorry. I'm not the Army kind of guy. I'm a Marine. So it's all good though. I appreciate it. Thank you. As much as I'd love to take credit for the private conscriptovich. The name actually comes from a video about Purun and the corruption of the Russian military. Very really good watch, and that's coming from Nuclear. And he says and the quote was nonsense. We can walk over it still. And the quote's to Private Conscriptovich. Calm down there, Ivan. But anyway, yeah. So remember, no disintegrations. The Wagner Group. Or the Ukrainians didn't seem to get told that by Lord Vader there, because the Wagner Group disintegrated quite quickly. We see more evidence of mass looting to surprise nobody in this area, as we see that the Russians, this is just the look of the contents of a Russian soldier's bag. So this is from a either dead or now captured Russian soldier. This is the contents of his bag. Pots and pans, brand new. Skillets, and a teddy bear, and a hairdryer. The fact that a teddy bear is included in this is probably the most just striking thing about the whole thing. That like goes beyond Disney blankets, like we saw in the crazy tank guys stuff from Popyaska. But this is a whole level of just what. First of all, pillaging is against the Geneva Convention, in case you didn't know. That's a war crime. And quite literally taking from children who may have actually been killed. We do see here the comfort factor. So for the second military in the world, they have absolutely no safety standards. There's some good photos that supposedly come from the Moskva before it sank of just like shells everywhere. This is the same thing, but from the ground forces. Just take a look. You thought remember that ammo depot that they had in Balaklia that was just all suddenly just stacked on top of each other? Is really nice and well stocked. Yeah, this is what happens when that gets to the front.
Ось ми заїхали. Що ми бачимо? Валяється неймовірна кількість різноманітних і апогеєм нашого, так сказати, екскурсіонного туру.
So we see things like for the Ukrainians where they have a ton of like ammunition that's like stacked on top of stuff, right? Like they just have it laying out. You do put together ready ammo. Like if you're in a gun position, you know you're going to be there for a while, or you're in a static defensive position, you know you're going to be there for a while. You have ready ammo. Like that's a thing. That's normal. Not how I would do ready ammo, but ready ammo nonetheless. Makes sense. And they are stacked on top. But this is stupid. This is a quick... That's one smoke away from a bad day. For, you know, people always talk about, well, you can smoke around like C4 or whatever because, you know, it doesn't explode from fire. No, but it burns really hot really quickly. That's why you don't smoke around ammunition. Just because it doesn't necessarily explode when fire or something gets too hot doesn't mean it's a good situation regardless. Yeah. Are those ammo boxes from Russia? This comes from Rooster Cybers. Yes. Yes, these are Russian. These are from Russian defensive positions that have been abandoned. And this is just dumb. This is so far beyond just having some ready ammunition. There is no way in a fire for effect in an adjustment mission that you're going to drop that many rounds in a single time frame. There's just not. You're just not going to. This is not how you know. Like the Russians are just doing this nuts. The Ukrainians, we've seen them have ready ammo. We've seen them have artillery rounds and stuff ready to go on the ground, but not like this. This is a bunch of 82mm mortars.
Те, що я вам покажу трошки пізніше. О, літачок. На жаль, ми не знаємо, чий це літачок. Да, але ці штучки точно.
Yeah, so needless to say, don't leave your ammo lying around like that. That's a dumb decision. Well, if you're Russian, I guess you can. And another jet was reportedly downed, Russian Su-25 Frogfoot, which is a close air support aircraft. When you talk about the Frogfoot, you're gonna want to think about the A-10, but the Russian version. That's kind of sucks a lot more. And that's pretty much what the Su-25 is. But it reportedly one was shot down via manpads. It looks like Iglo launchers, either Iglo or Strela launchers. I'm not an expert in that side of things, but that brought this thing down. Take a look.
Далеко, по-моему, да?
Нет, ну как далеко есть, если она навелась, все четко. Каких 4? Тут максимум 3 была, он вообще четко. И он увидел уже, когда у нас спуски были, у него, видно, система сработала.
Развернул. Есть.
So you can quite literally see the smoke just pouring out of his launcher. And then you can also see just this giant plume of smoke where it crashed in the distance. Yeah, and they're just rolling around in pickup trucks, just bringing down aircraft. This is why the Russians can't gain any kind of air superiority. But we also see them using banned munitions. We're seeing them use incendiary munitions against, and we're seeing this up close and personal. Usually, we see where it's kind of like looks like some pretty fireworks, kind of raining down onto an area, but then it hits a tree line in the darkness, and you really don't see a whole lot. This is up close and personal. So first of all, it's being used in highly concentrated civilian populations. That's banned underneath the third protocol of the Geneva Conventions, which was accepted and adopted in 1980. And then it also is probably targeting Ukrainian personnel, which the use of it against personnel is actually banned under International Humanitarian Law Rule number 85. So go ahead and take a look. Up close and personal, this is a thermite attack, essentially. Take a look.
Охуеть, блядь. Фосфором хуйнули, ебать, блядь. С Новым годом, блядь.
И с новым счастьем. Как ты думаешь, братцы запытаются чем-нибудь жить?
Я не знаю, блядь. Щось мені кажеться, що ми сьогодні не постріляємо, я ж кажу.
Я тобі кажу, щось моя душа зразу така.
Пиздец, блядь.
Треба продержатися пиво.
Та ще хуйню, блядь, все побачиш. Фосфором хуйнули. Фосфором, ребята, блядь.
And incendiary munitions, these are burning at like 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, these are burning at stupid levels. And they're just lighting fires. But that stuff hitting a human person is horrific. Horrific. It doesn't stop burning. It's not like you can go out there with a fire extinguisher and put these things out. They don't stop burning. They stop burning when the chemical reaction stops happening. That's when these stop. Reports at this point are that Ukrainian forces are being embattled on the outskirts of IZYUM. IZYUM is one of the main locations up here within the Kharkiv Oblast. It appears its main objectives here. So right now, Wargonzo is reported, who is a Russian war reporter, is booking it out of the city of IZYUM after having just arrived there not but a day ago. And you can see the look on the panic on their faces. They're attempting to car to leave before sunset. Russian telegrams at this point are saying that both Lyman and IZYUM are currently being abandoned.
В общем, час назад. Это уже вечер. Быстренько меняем колесо. Нужно как можно скорее из изюма выскочить, вернуться обратно по единственной артерии, потому что по темноте уже будет, конечно, опасно. С вами был проект Варгонзо. В общем, час назад.
Needless to say, it's not good. And we'll get to a little bit later, just how big of a repercussion it is for the Russians at this point. When we get to the international news, because there's been some interesting developments with that, and not even the propaganda has won out on this one. It's been pretty impressive just how silent a lot of the Russian side is, whether that's Russian supporters or the Russian government. It's pretty crazy. But the Russians are attempting to reinforce IZYUM. And we see this as they are trying to halt and stall out this lightning fast advance. I don't think it's going to work. We've seen there's been some reports that I do not believe are super credible at this point, that this entire column was captured with like 3,000 Russian troops. Once again, I do not find that credible. On any of my sources, I do not find it credible. However, I do believe that these Russian forces are likely already engaged, and I do believe that they are probably already taking quite an extensive amount of losses. They just are not prepared, and they're trying to throw everything they can into this. Take a look. I saw a comment today that made me laugh so damn hard. It said, and the comment was on this, that Aw, look how cute it is. It just makes you want to boop him on the snoot with a javelin. So anyway, needless to say, the Russians are not doing so hot. They're quite literally throwing whatever they can into this. They literally painted targets so they have zero reasons to complain if they go boom. Pre-Tron targets. Demise FPS regarding the convoy says somewhere an A-10 pilot is crying. Somewhere a machine gunner is also crying. That's perfect enfilade fire, in case anyone's wondering. A tank gunner is crying. There's someone in any combat role crying. That's a perfect linear sheaf. If you're an artillery guy or a borderman, that's a perfect linear sheaf on that road. And that's like, I've seen ISIS convoys like that, and they just got decimated with 120 millimeter mortars on a linear sheaf. It was hilarious to watch. And this would be like anybody that has a combat role is currently very upset that they weren't in a position to destroy that convoy. Well, Nuclear says, well, of course they aren't doing so hot. It's closing in on winter. Yeah, it's about to get really, really cold. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're seeing out of the Russians here as they're trying to push into these areas like Kupyansk and over here to IZYUM to try and do something, anything to halt the Ukrainian advance. But it's probably not working out in their favor, as we can quite see. As we jump over here, we see that Ukrainians are crossing the river over here at Lyman. So they have crossed the Seversky Donets River, which runs through here. Lyman was taken during the offensive in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. This is one of the areas where the Russians really were putting pressure and was a supporting objective for them during that campaign to take the Luhansk Oblast. Now we're seeing Ukrainian forces pushing back into Lyman, and we're pretty sure there's currently fighting on the outskirts of town at this point, as there really isn't a whole lot separating the two lines from this city. Take a look. This is the crossing of the Seversky Donets River towards Lyman. Here you go. There they are crossing the bridge. You can see the rail bridge just destroyed. They're probably very happy they don't have to cross it this time in a boat. Nuclear says, Rooster, you wouldn't want, or he's saying that you wouldn't want to be in the A10 as it's not usable in places with any level of AA. Manpads can easily down an A10. I would say that's true, but the Taliban had quite a significant stockpile of manpads and never downed an A10. I'd also say that that's also saying that the Russians have any manpads there. That's also assuming that the Russians are willing to even bother looking up. And they're not just cowering in their holes or running for their lives right now. As it would appear that after an advance of about 50 kilometers in about 3 days, yeah, I probably wouldn't be sticking around. I don't think the Russians are sticking around to find out what the Ukrainian Air Force has in store for them if they bother staying in their hole. Now, that's just me being a little cynical there. But, yeah. Yeah, I think an A-10 may be fine. As we move down here and move out of the Kharkiv Oblast, we get some more updates here. This is the daily Donetsk update coming from Pavel Korolenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. He says, quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on September the 8th. 9 people were killed and 23 citizens were injured. And we do actually have that from his official Twitter as well. Rooster saying people have strange associations with A-10 Shrug. The A-10 is by far the best close air support aircraft to ever support an infantryman ever. And that's without a doubt. Anyway, Javelin Cage was ineffective on this tank over here in the Donbass, as we can take a look here.
Сепарский танк, блядь. Ебать, тут неудобно, нахуй. Це пизда, нахуй. Ебанись.
So, it's likely that this had... Whoops. It's likely that the that this tank had its hatches open when it was destroyed, because of, you can see the damage and the flame out in it. So you can see where this, for instance, you can see where it's burned here, where it's burned through and melted. You also see the side of the tank there where it's burned through and melted. And you can also see where there's been reactive armor that's been destroyed as well. That's what these blocks up here are. This is destroyed reactive armor. So we know that it did have reactive armor and that it was hit. And then as he gets in here... But the tank is just... You know, it's very... it probably had its hatches open because I'm not seeing any indications of the Monroe effect on the tank. Not that it would be that you would be able to see a lot of... But you can see where the flame has really taken its point here. But it also didn't do a sympathetic detonation of the vehicle, meaning it didn't destroy... It didn't blow up the ready ammunition, and therefore it didn't completely destroy that tank either. So it's quite possible that wasn't a javelin shot, regardless. If it was definitely not a top attack, because I'm not seeing it having punched through the top of the turret. It seems it punched through the side. Nuclear says, oh god, I remember when a member of the U.S. government used the term cope cages. They are cope cages. That's exactly what it is. The javelin cage has never worked. It never will work. There's no configuration in which it will work. It will never do anything. The javelin cage is an absolute failure of an idea to make the Russian tanker feel better as he's about to die. It's a comfort factor. It's like when the U.S. government gives you, they give you mop suits and they send you into like a sea burn environment and they give you these things. It's basically straight adrenaline. It's not epinephrine, I don't think. But it's a thing that helps with if you get like X amount of nerve agent on you, whatever, you actually like stab yourself with essentially an EpiPen. It's an auto injector, and then you have 3 of them, and then a corpsman can come and give you a 4th if need be. Like, it's to keep you in the fight longer. Like, you're not going to live through it. It's not probably going to like save you. You quite literally have to puncture your mop suit, which is protecting you. Like, it's not one of those things. Like, some things are just there so that it makes them feel better and it makes them feel protected so they'll actually do their job. Not, like, there was nobody out there that got these things when we went into Syria, because we went into Syria and we had mop suits and everything, which the rats immediately chewed through in their packages. But we got these things, and they're like, yeah, it's an auto-injector. If you get over 10 cc's, which means you've been contaminated, period, of nerve agent, you're going to put your mop suit on, and then you're going to stab this thing, and then you're going to hook it into your mop suit so we can see how many you had. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm going to puncture my mop suit and probably die after my heart just continues to pump endlessly from this essentially straight adrenaline that you're giving me, simply so my body doesn't seize up. And that's just so I'll stay in the fight long enough to propel a counterattack on me. Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, U.S. government. Now, I'm sure there is probably some scientific thing or it's supposed to do to help you, but I didn't see the point. Aircraft losses here for the Russians. Quote, the Armed Forces of Ukraine shot down a Russian helicopter, Ka-52, or a Ka-52 Alligator is what its NATO designation is. And 6 UAVs on September the 8th. And that's coming from the press service of the Russian, or of the Air Force of Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. As we jump down here to Mariupol, there's been a silent protest. So the letter Y, when the Ukrainian language, is unique to the Ukrainian alphabet and the Ukrainian alphabet alone. People have been drawing it around the city in protest to the ban of the Ukrainian language in the schools here in Mariupol. Once again, this really backs the rhetoric that there is a genocide against Ukraine. Ukraine, the purpose, the definition of genocide, which I brought up here so many times now, is the destruction of a group in whole or in part based off of ethnical, national, religious lines. And it's they've deported over 7,000 children, and they have banned the Ukrainian language in many places. They use essentially concentration camps, but they call them filtration camps. They have enforced the disappearances of people. We've watched them castrate people live, burn people alive, bomb cities into oblivion. I just don't understand how, as a society, something like this can happen. Like, as a civilized, like, race in the world. As, like, a civilized, human being. Things like this can happen in this modern day and age. You're supposed to read about the Holocaust and read books like Night by Elie Wiesel, in school, so that stuff like this doesn't happen in the world. At least that's what my teachers told me when I was in school. I don't understand it. I thought I've seen it all. I thought I've seen, terrible, terrible things. And I thought I'd seen the end of it. And that, I've seen the worst of what humanity could possibly do. When I was in Syria, one of our posts was on top of an ISIS prison. And it was a former ISIS prison, and it still had several of the rooms. It was like welded shut, and there were still scratches in the wall where the Islamic State had tortured people inside of this prison, and you could still find empty shell casings of 7.62 by 3.9 ammunition, and where they were executing people on the side of the building and inside the building. And you look at that, and you have to know the immense amount of suffering that someone had to go through for that for them to make that deep of scratches into the wall as they're being tortured. And then every single day in and day out here in Ukraine, we hear about the filtration camps and the deportation of children and the destruction of complete cities. And I've seen villages completely destroyed. I've seen the bombing of Aleppo. I have seen also the awesomeness. I've seen the awesomeness of immense overwhelming military firepower. And it was, just dumbstruck by its capabilities. And yet, I find it unfathomable that Mariupol, in a matter of a couple months, was completely leveled. And that people in Olenivka, that Ukrainians in Olenivka were burning alive. That the people from the Azovstal look like people from Auschwitz, and we have photos to show you. From concentration camps, to show you the similarities. That the languages are being banned. That they don't believe in World War II, they believe in the Great Patriotic War. Because it wasn't totally a team effort to do that. It's so hard to fathom something like this. For me, and I've said this multiple times. If you were a veteran and you fought in, say, the War on Terror, then this is a war beyond comprehension. In so many ways. This is nothing like what I or you probably went through. This is, I dare I say, some of the earlier parts of the Iraq War too, is not nearly as. This is insane. This is insanity. This is absolute insanity. Over here at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the International Atomic Energy Administration demands a safe zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And once again, they fail to assign responsibility to either side shelling the location. Take a look.
Shelling has caused a complete blackout in Energodar and compromised the safety operation of the nearby Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. There is now a low chance that reliable off-site power can be restored. The shelling is putting in danger operators and their families, making it difficult to adequately staff the plant. Together, this has significantly increased the risk of a nuclear accident. Let me be clear. The shelling around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant must stop, and a nuclear safety and security protection zone agreed immediately. A nuclear power plant can never be a pawn of war. Its fate must not be decided by military means. The consequences of such action are far too grave. The IAEA is at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and can facilitate the zone's implementation. There is no time to waste.
For those that don't know, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Ukraine knows better than anybody what happens when a nuclear power plant goes into a meltdown status. Is considering Pripyat and Chernobyl lay inside of Ukraine. What happens is if the nuclear facility at Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant goes in a meltdown, it will be so much more catastrophic than Chernobyl. It will hands down be the worst nuclear disaster to have occurred in history. Ever. Ever. Without a doubt. Russia will be affected. Ukraine will be affected. Anyone downwind will be affected. And that could include most of Europe, or a lot of Europe. Most of Moldova, parts of Romania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Belarus. All of that could be affected simply by this one nuclear power plant. That's all it takes. One missile, one mistake. One mistake. It's all it takes for millions and millions of people in the worst nuclear disaster in human history to occur. A Russian convoy here in Novokhovka is reportedly destroyed by a HIMARS strike. At this point, we do not have any further information, but we do have reports that they did strike a ferry crossing, and this appears to be next to the river. So there's a good possibility that this may have been that ferry crossing they're talking about, and we'll take a look. More successful strikes occurred here in the Kherson Oblast. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed Russian PM 203mm, which is the 2S7, by the way, 203mm self-propelled gun, 152mm self-propelled howitzer Mista S, 3 self-propelled artillery and mortar systems, 2 enemy ammunition depots in the Berislav and in the Berislav region, and an enemy ferry crossing in the Novokhovka region in the south of Ukraine on September the 8th, as we get this 24 hours afterwards. And that's coming from Operational Command South. Let's jump up here. It would appear that Blahodativka, sorry, my pronunciation is pretty terrible, has been liberated. Ukrainian forces did liberate Blahodativka as part of their counteroffensive here within the Kherson Oblast today.
Опа. Пане та панове, Благодатівка наша.
Хлопці, це школа Благодатівки. Прапор над нею. Такий прапор буде висіти в кожному місті, в кожному селі нашої суверенної держави. Україна не зламна. Україна почує. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Amazing to see more successes here in the Kherson Oblast, which, once again, I mean, the news just really trickled down considering this is ongoing. So it's good to see that there are still successes on this front. Once again, it's more of shaping the battlefield than it would appear to be an actual counteroffensive, but it definitely shows the weaknesses of the Russian Federation here. And with our last point here inside of the country of Ukraine itself, we see that more ships are leaving through the grain corridor here. Quote, on September 9th, 3 more ships with the Ukrainian agricultural products left the ports of Odessa through the grain corridor. That's coming from the official Twitter account of the Turkish Ministry of National Defense. That is everything inside the country of Ukraine, but don't worry, we have plenty of stuff outside the country as well. And as we jump up here into Russia, we start to see some of the reasoning behind this. The blistering counteroffensive that has occurred inside of the Kharkiv Oblast has even broken through onto the Russian propaganda. This is coming, it's panic. This is on the political segment on a Russian sports channel here. And they say we should pray for our men who will hold on, who will hold on here. Take a look.
Из Изюма самая разная информация поступает вот последний там час-полтора, и в том числе во время нашего эфира. Я просто невозможно что-то сейчас комментировать, да, мы не знаем какой-то официальной информации. Я просто хотел сказать, чтобы, ну, все, кто верующий, наверное, чтобы молились за наших парней, я в том числе, это, ну, нет слов, просто молились за то, чтобы держались за наших мужчин, которые там сейчас находятся. И победа обязательно будет за нами, жизнь все расставит по своим местам. Это была программа «Есть тема». Меня зовут Антон Анисимов. Всем пока.
Onto Russian TV, which is controlled by the government, by the way. It's insane that this is cut through the propaganda side of the Russian Federation. And the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, no comments. No comments whatsoever. In fact, they didn't say anything. Everything is going so well that they posted it on the 9th. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea is celebrating its national holiday, the day of the foundation of the republic. We congratulate the people and leadership in North Korea on yet another anniversary of this event. We wish them peace and prosperity. It's North Korea. It's North Korea. It's North Korea. Nobody should wish them peace and they should wish the people of North Korea peace and prosperity. Not the leadership, or I mean, their military really isn't a military anymore, but that's that. It's North Korea. Damn. I guess when you're trying to buy a bunch of ammunition from them, it probably makes sense that you would probably try and talk them up, huh? Anti-war picket was held at the Ministry of Defense here. Picketers Jelena Semenova and Valeria Demidova were both detained. They were, and then they went to the action in Ukrainian mourning, black with red ribbons. So the protests are beginning there in Moscow. And in St. Petersburg, the price for insubordination is high. 7 lawmakers from St. Petersburg's Smolny municipal district have been summoned by the police after they demanded Parliament's lower chamber, the State Duma, charge President Vladimir Putin with high treason over his decision to launch an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. They claim that the war is costing Russia its combat-effective army units, while young working-age citizens are dying, further exacerbating the country's economic problems. They received subpoenas late on September the 8th, ordering them to come to the police station the next day to fill out protocols on a charge of discrediting Russia's armed forces. If you guys want to check out more, you're more than happy to read those articles. Remember, all of this stuff is available on our website too. All of these maps are archived on our website. If you guys want to go check them out at any point in time, I post them before the stream even comes up so that you guys can have the opportunity to check it out. Over in Stockholm, climate change has received a little bit of an update here. An updated assessment of the most important climate tipping elements and their potential tipping points found that even global warming of 1 degree Celsius, a threshold that we have already passed, puts us at risk of triggering some tipping points. 6 climate tipping points. I'm going to get rid of this porn bot real quick. Sorry guys. 6 climate tipping points, including collapse of the Greenland and West Antarctic ice sheets, die off of low altitude coral reefs, and widespread abrupt permafrost thaw, become likely within the Paris Agreement, a range of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius warming. Currently, the world is headed to about a 2 to 3 degrees Celsius of warming. This finding proves a compelling reasoning to limit additional warming as much as possible. So quite an immense amount of global warming there. That's kind of and we've seen some of the ramifications of this, such as the droughts that we're currently seeing in several places and throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East, especially in Iraq, and throughout, as we're looking down here, over in Somalia and the Horn of Africa. I mean, it's just been pretty substantial amounts of overall just pretty specific, a pretty widespread climate change that's really starting to see the effects now. Something that came in pretty last minute here for you guys. Passenger train and freight train collided in central Croatia. A passenger train and freight train collided Friday night in central Croatia, killing at least 3 people and injuring another 11 or more. The collision happened around 9:30 p.m. near the town of Novska, which is close to Croatia's border with Bosnia. Prime Minister Andrej Plenković confirmed that so far the bodies of 3 people were found at the site of the accident. They said more victims could still be found in the morning. The injured have been hospitalized, with some with serious injuries, but none in life-threatening condition. The cause of the collision is not immediately clear. Officials say both trains were pushed off the rails after the collision. An investigation has been launched to determine what the cause of the collision was. Up here in London, Charles III will be proclaimed king tomorrow, on the 10th, as the British Houses of Parliament met in the special session to pay tributes to Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace. Announced that her son, Charles, who is 73, will be proclaimed king in the centuries-old ceremony. The event, which will be held at St. James Palace in London on Saturday, will involve a reading of the proclamation from a balcony, followed by similar announcements over the weekend at the Royal Exchange in London. In Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, for the first time in history, the Ascension Council will be televised. So that's pretty crazy that's happening. I never thought that was going to happen in my lifetime. But then again, she was the Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth II was also 96. But we also all thought Queen Elizabeth was immortal. So I guess that's... I'm still really deeply saddened by that. That really hurts. That's an icon and end of an era. It really is. Turkish authorities announced the arrest of an important Islamic State representative. The Turkish authorities announced the arrest of an Iraqi citizen named Bashar Khattab Ghazal al-Sumadeh, who is accused of being a former member of the Iraqi terrorist group Ansar al-Islam and is currently one of the important representatives for the ISIS High Command. It is known by the nicknames Abu Zaid and Stuaz Zayed. The name of the arrested person has previously surfaced. A number of researchers believe that he could be the passport data of the new leader of the Islamic State, Abu Hassan al-Qureshi. However, the Turkish authorities have made it clear that the person arrested is not Abu Hassan. At the moment, the true identity of the ISIS leader has not been established. But they have indeed arrested him. It would appear that he is in Istanbul. As we jump over here into Pakistan, over here in Islamabad, the updates on flooding are here. 5 more people were killed, with a total of 1,396 at this point. 6 more injuries, for a total of 12,700 total injuries reported. 4,200 more houses were damaged, for the total being 1.7 million houses damaged in the past 24 hours. Scattered thunderstorms and rain of moderate intensity is expected over the upper catchments of all of the major rivers, along with Islamabad and Peshawar, Rawalpindi, and in Jalojhara divisions. Isolated thunderstorms and rain of light and moderate intensity is expected in the southeast Sindh, along with Kohat, Banu, Deccan, Sargodha, Lahore, and the DG Khan divisions. Mainly dry weather is expected over the rest of the country.
रखा, फिर वो स्कूल में बिठाया, एक जमींदार बेचारा ने बिठाया स्कूल में, वो स्कूल डूब गई पानी में। अभी रोड पे बैठे तो यही है जो कपड़ा बांध के और ये जो घाघरा है, जो कपड़ा, ये चुनरी फाड़ के।
And this right here is that daily update coming from the NDMA here in Pakistan. So if you guys want to check out that, you certainly can. We jump over here up into the Uyghur region of China, where in Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region, the Chinese authorities imposed a lockdown under the pretext of fighting the coronavirus, but did not provide anybody with food. People locked in their homes for several weeks have begun to starve to death, especially children. The Uyghurs have also been reportedly put into internment camps for quite some time now, and members of their families have disappeared in many cases. That is the understanding of the situation so far. There hasn't been any accountability that I'm aware of regarding that. Nuclear is saying, I remember hearing Turkey arresting an ISIS leader before. My question is, how did he hide out there for a while? Well, tracking down terrorists is actually very, very hard. And Turkey also has, this very unfortunate point where both in Syria and Iraq, they have a border with both of those, as well as Iran, as well as, I think, up here, Lebanon. No, actually, that's Syria right there. So it's so they got a lot of issues because the craziest, most deadly region in the world is on their doorstep. So it's very easy unfortunately, there's a lot of opportunity here, in a lot of area that's for crossing points for terrorists. Some more comments here. Rooster Sideburns is definitely a genocide. The world is also silent about that. Yeah. So if you've never seen it, I've watched some pretty good documentaries on it as well. The Chinese are a communist government. The Uyghurs are a group of people here that are a Muslim, I believe they're a Muslim faith and they are an ethnicity here. They would like Mandarin Chinese to be the predominant people of China, not other ethnicities. And they also and basically they're also, being a communist organization or being a communist government, they don't have any religion, and so they are persecuting them for that as well. It is very much a genocide on multiple counts. There's a lot of footage of these places. I am now officially banned in China. And it's pretty terrible. And there's photos that went with that story too, but I just don't I didn't think that you needed to see that we needed to put that on here. There's a lot of dead children. Not something I really think that you guys need to see, but you understand the point. Down here in Sichuan province, we see the fact that the death toll has risen once again to 88 people, 50 in the Luding County and Gaza Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, 38 in the Shimian County, Yan City, with 400 plus injured, 11 in critical condition and 38 in serious condition, and 30 still missing. And that is as of today at 12 p.m. local time. You can see some of the rescue efforts there. North Korea, as we've already talked about today, North Korea officially declared itself a nuclear state today. It's officially enshrined the right to use preemptive nuclear strikes to protect itself in a new law that leader Kim Jong-un said makes the nuclear status irreversible and bars denuclearization talks. North Korea's rubber stamp parliament, the Supreme Leaders Assembly, passed the legislation on Thursday as a replacement to the 2013 law that first outlined the country's nuclear status. North Korea's move comes as observers say North Korea appears to be preparing to resume nuclear testing for the first time since 2017, after historic summits with then U.S. President Donald Trump and the other world leaders in 2018 failed to persuade Kim to abandon his nuclear weapons development. If you want to read more on that, you can go and check out Reuters. Nuclear says if it helps you, a large YouTuber creator by the name of Vanos Gaming may also be banned in China for his jokes about Taiwan. I was just joking about the fact that I do not care. I do not care that the largest population in the world is out of China. Do not care at all, like whatsoever. I do not care if I am banned in China. There's a lot of there's a lot of cool culture and history and a lot of things in China, and Chinese are cool people. And it's a cool culture, right? And it's a cool thing to learn about, just like anywhere else in the world. Their government sucks. It's the last bastion of communism. And they're very aggressive. Just like Russia is kind of pushing it's trying to expand its sphere of influence. And I've kind of hinted at, or I've talked about this a little bit in the past. China, like Russia, is expanding its sphere of influence within Europe. China is doing it in the Pacific, much like how Nazi Germany during World War II expanded its sphere of influence in Europe, right? And then they made a pact, the Axis of Evil, as it's known, with Japan, which was expanding its sphere of influence throughout the Pacific. China's doing it in a lot less discreet, or in a much more discreet way. Nuclear says, do care if you are, if you can make jokes about the Chinese government even more at that rate. Here's the thing, I try and stay apolitical on that, but I really do not care, considering I've literally got to watch an entire genocide of a people and the threatening of invasion of an entire country and basically the entire expansion. They lay claim to most of the South China Sea, the Yellow Sea, the Sea of Taiwan, the East China Sea, the Sea of Japan, parts of the Philippine Sea. They lay claim to pretty much everything. They build military islands onto it. They very much threaten other nations. They're building the largest, they have the largest navy in the world now of surface fleets, which they have only produced in about the last decade, truly. They have the largest military in the world. How well trained that is, we don't know, considering everything they have is a knockoff of somebody else's stuff. For instance, the Type 85 TAC-3 is essentially just a knockoff of the T-90, and that's their main battle tank. It's not... Their knockoff of a stealth fighter for 5th generation is a knockoff F-35. Like, they have a knockoff Javelin that they built. It's not... I think the difference is that theirs is reloadable or whatever. I don't know. I've never used it, nor do I care. It probably doesn't work nearly as effectively. The thing is that the Chinese and the Russians are essentially the new version of an Axis of Evil. They're allies that have similar views against similar groups, most notably the United States and the United Kingdom and France. And one is focused on their expansionist ideas in Europe. The other one is focused on expansionist ideologies in through the Pacific. And then North Korea is like Italy. Because this is the soft underbelly of I don't know, the Pacific, I guess. It's just it baffles me. But yes, absolutely no one saw the fact that North Korea was going to declare itself a nuclear state again, ever. A surprise, I don't think. There's chaos here in Comoros. Hunger riots have engulfed the island of IZYUM and near Mayotte since yesterday due to shortages of rice and staple foods that have been going on for weeks. Residents are already robbing rice from stores. Later, the local police arrested several people while trying to rob a food truck. The demonstrators also began demanding the release of the young people. I'll get to you later, Nuclear. And so that is the situation here on Comoros. You jump over here into Benin, we end up in Porto Novo, and we see that Benin has requested Rwanda's help over growing terrorist threats. The media report that Benin is negotiating with Rwanda to deploy a military contingent to fight jihadist groups in the country. If all issues are agreed upon, it is planned that in October, about 350 Rwandan military men will go to the Republic of Benin, and later this number can be doubled. Now, Porto Novo believes that due to the growing number of terrorist attacks in the region, Islamists from Burkina Faso and Niger will soon turn their attention to Benin. Rwanda has established itself as a relatively successful fighter against jihadists within Africa. So that's kind of cool to see. Also, there's a big African Union thing that they have. So a lot of countries a lot of countries in Africa are a part of what's called the African Union, or the AU, and that's where a lot of these agreements are occurring. As we jump over here, we have a couple of developments. We'll actually start up here in New York, where here at the UN headquarters, today is the International Day to Protect Education from Attack. Over the past 6 years, the Global Coalition to Protect Education from Attack, or the GCPA, collected over 13,400 reports of attacks on education or military use of educational facilities worldwide, with more than 25,000 students, teachers, and academics injured, killed, or harmed in such attacks. In 2020 to 2021, there were more than 5,000 reported attacks on education and incidents of military use of schools and universities, harming more than 9,000 students and educators in at least 85 countries, with the highest incidents in Mali and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, and Palestine. This year's commemoration is focusing on Act Now to protect education from attack. You see this coming from the United Nations here. The Parish of Shanglu, interesting name, says, did you know that the United States gets 20% of our electricity from Russia, and that without Russian titanium, our military cannot build new vehicles? Without Chinese tungsten, the U.S. military would not be able to manufacture tank training rounds. NATO calls themselves the Golden Billion. Okay. So, that's a quick Google search. How much electricity does the U.S. get from Russia? Let's go to the IAEA website. Okay, conventional hydropower plants, a little more porn bots. We get to hide those. Well, I'm not finding that voltmeter. Here we go. He's back to his normal account now. Okay, so interesting. So I'm seeing that the United States relied on Russia for about 8% of its energy imports, and only 3% of that is crude oil. So, yeah, that's pretty false. So, 20% is literally 1/5. It would take the United States at least 5 years to be able to build the infrastructure to find enough uranium for a nuclear power for our nuclear power plants. So here's the thing, there, Pirates of Shanglu. The United States maintains this thing. It's called reserves. So if you take a look here, okay. By the way, the United States can also be the world's largest exporter of crude oil in the world, as well as the world's largest exporter of natural gas in the world, the world's largest exporter of lumber in the world, as well as just pretty much the world's largest exporter of pretty much every natural resource in the world, as we do maintain the infrastructure to do so. Have you ever heard of Galveston Bay and the oil refineries off of here? Ever? Or, you know, quite literally anything else. I mean, we got plenty of stuff, man. Because if you take a look at this, so going out west is the best example because there's only 1 billion of them. The National Forest, National Forest, National Forest, National Forest, National Preserve. All of these things, you know what a national forest is? They talk about things like, you know, they talk about things like, national forests are there for like conservation. It's if you've ever heard of CGP Grey, I highly recommend going and listening to him. He has an entire video on this. These are like your resource cards in a game. Okay, all of these, if the United States go, by the way, it takes 2 years for the United States to get up into full military industrial capacity, because at peak level of performance within the U.S. industrial complex there in 1943, specifically in May of 1943, the United States was able to outproduce every major warring power in the world, and was also exporting most of that through Lend-Lease, with 97% of the United States economy going directly to the war effort. So the United States is very capable of doing it on its own. It's just we're much more globalized now. The United States has no problem going from the worst recession in human history, also known as the Great Depression, to outproducing the entire planet and having the Pacific Fleet, which is larger than all of the major warring powers, within less than 2 years. Because we got attacked on December 7th, 1941. We had already started industrializing a little bit because of the Lend-Lease. And then everything went into overdrive, and by 1943, we're the top leading competitors. Now, this was 80 years ago, and I understand that. But the United States is very well and capable of doing that. We maintain the ability to do that specifically for the purpose of needing to have to go to war on a major scale again. So it's not, we're not worried about that, Shanglu. The United States is not worried about that. And as for tank training rounds, the United States maintains a stockpile of military hardware and equipment and military, supplies to have. Actually, there's an overage. There's so much we're giving it away. The United States Department of Defense maintains a fluctuating stockpile of equipment that is able to withstand a long protracted conflict. Specifically stated, a long and protracted conflict. And the United States actually, as one of few countries in the world that is capable of actually ensuring the logistical handling of such an endeavor, considering we quite literally have to go anywhere we want to fight and take everything with us, the ability to fight a long and protracted conflict. So it's just... the United States maintains natural resources. We don't use most of our natural resources. We do not use most of our equipment. We barely use most of our stockpiles. The United States maintains surpluses of everything. Have you seen? I guarantee you've probably never seen the steel mills working in Gary, or you've probably never seen the grand wide national forests. Considering that, what is it, like 80% or more of the state of Nevada is federally owned as natural preserves and as military training grounds and everything else. Like, Nevada owns like less than 20% of its own self. Everything else is for natural resources that is controlled by the federal government, which restricts the mining, the drilling, the recovery, the chopping down of all of that natural resources and land. The United States could literally the United States just doesn't want to cannibalize itself. Because we don't have to. We don't have to fight the world's largest war if we just recommend, Aravis says it best. If you're welcome to share the info sources with us. I'm willing to hear you out, man. But it's just I don't think you've ever seen the military-industrial complex of the United States before. You've seen movies in Hollywood and maybe some newsreels from the early 2000s, man. But this is, man, I don't think you have any idea. The U.S. Marine Corps simply didn't even care about tanks anymore. Like, do you know how much of a surplus you have to have and how much capability you have to go, we don't need tanks. If we need tanks, we'll call the Army, I guess. But we don't need them. Like, the Marine Corps just up and did that. Well, the Marine Corps doesn't have any tank battalions anymore. I watched them literally drive them away in 29 Palms. Like, they don't have them. They simply don't exist. To BIAP in Kosovo? I was in the army for 10 years. I was an expeditionary into BIAP in Kosovo. Yeah, I mean, they just don't... yeah, the industrial complex, like, the overage is stupid. And, you know, I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. You said you were in the Army for 10 years. So I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. The fact of the matter is, 10 years, 4 years, doesn't matter. Neither one of us, nor anybody else is probably going to be watching this stream anytime soon, has any idea what the numbers for those stockpiles are. Nobody here. Why? Because why would you tell somebody? You wouldn't. Like, you're not... Yeah, so it's not... Like, we wouldn't know the numbers. We wouldn't know the overages. We wouldn't know any of that. Is Iraq's... Oh, yeah. BIAP? I've never heard of it called the BIAP. But I also wasn't at the international airport. I was at the embassy in Baghdad. So, yeah, I don't... Yeah. The overage is insane. But the thing is, like, we just don't... the United States industrial complex is not at its even near its peak performance. Even near its peak performance. You do drawdowns and measures, so that way you can reevaluate what your stockpiles are and what you can give away. You just maintain a proper overage. Anyway, so as you're saying this, by the way, about how we stop sending things to Ukraine when we get low, the United States has announced $2.8 billion in military security aid to Ukraine. And during his trip to Ukraine this week, Secretary Blinken announced an additional $2.8 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, its neighbors, including $675 million in new military aid, including more guided multiple launch rocket systems, artillery ammunitions, anti-tank systems. The package also includes about $2.2 billion for military financing for Ukraine and European allies and partners. Once again, this is coming from the State Department's official Twitter.
Yesterday,
take a look.
As I was in Kyiv, Secretary of Defense Austin convened the 5th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. More than 50 countries took part, including Ukraine's defense minister, as well as the Secretary General. Support from that group continues to make a decisive difference on the battlefield, where Ukraine's brave defenders are not just holding ground, they are retaking their sovereign territory in a two-front counteroffensive. As I told President Zelensky, the support of the United States is unwavering. I announced more than $2.8 billion in additional security assistance for Ukraine and also for its neighbors. That support includes $675 million in new military aid to Ukraine. This is part of the 20th drawdown of military equipment that President Biden has initiated, going back before the Russian aggression. It includes more guided multiple launch rocket systems, artillery ammunition, high-speed anti-radiation missiles, anti-tank systems. 20th drawdown now totals $14.7 billion. That sum also includes approximately $2.2 billion in what we call foreign military financing for Ukraine, but also for European allies and partners. That will allow them to begin to acquire systems for the medium and long term that will be essential to deterring and, if necessary, defending against further Russian aggression in the years to come.
So there you go, another further $2.8 billion announced in the latest and 20th drawdown of U.S. military equipment to be sent to Ukraine, as announced by Secretary Antony Blinken of the Secretary of State. The U.S. has also announced additional aid for Pakistan regarding its ongoing flooding. The administrator Samantha Power of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, announced an additional $20 million in humanitarian assistance for severe flooding in Pakistan, with total aid of $50.1 million since August. Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III also called General Qamar Javed Bajwa, Pakistan's chief army staff, and discussed the Department of Defense and U.S. Central Command's assistance to USAID and delivery of urgently needed humanitarian aid to Pakistan. Take a look. So here you go, Samantha Power from USAID and their official press release, as well as the Department of Defense regarding their call. And U.S. humanitarian responses to Pakistan floods. So, pretty good to see that. Let's see. Pretty cool to see that that assistance is ongoing there for them. So, Pirates of Shanglu. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys something kind of cool that I wasn't expecting to show you here on the channel. But this is a little bit of behind the scenes things for you, because continuing with that further conversation, he says that all of the grain ships that left Ukraine, only 3% went to poor, starving African nations. The rest went to NATO nations. And he says, read the daily news from any non-NATO source. Well, I'm about to show you guys our sources, or at least a large list of them. And this isn't complete, by the way. And let me just bring this up for y'all so you can see some of our sources here. So this is our source list that we go by. And this is just one tab. I don't know if you'll notice, but there's multiple tabs here. So this is the source list that we use when we're researching. So this is all the international ones. I'm talking the IAEA. I'm talking, as we go through here, you can see all sorts of stuff. Anti-trafficking, the OSCE, NATO, the Hubble Space Telescope, the Institute for the Study of War, Status 6, most of the United Nations stuff, pretty much the International Criminal Court, Amnesty International, the World Food Program, the Human Rights Watch, UN Special Procedures, World Health Organization, UN Peacekeeping, the ISS Research Mission, the MAVEN Mars Mission, World Meteorology Organization, and then you get to Ukraine. And then you get through all of the sources of Ukraine, to include people, news reporters, and everything like that. Ukraine Parliament, got members of government. We got the Ministry of Defense. We got analyzers. We got Telegram channels. We got Russia. Here we go. Here's Russia. We got the Kremlin, State Duma, Smolensk Line, Peter Severin, who is actually a USA reporter and the press secretary, former press secretary of the Russian Embassy in the United States, RT. The Russian Grain Union. We also have RIA News, RIA Novosti specifically, the Russian Arms Control Delegation to Vienna, the Russian Embassy to the United States, the Russian mission to Geneva, the Russian missions to the OSCE, the TASS News Organization, Alexander Elemenov, Mikhail Ulyanov, Dmitry Polyansky, the Russia at the United Nations, the Sputnik International, U.S. Embassy in Russia, the President of Russia, which hasn't posted, by the way, since April, Russia, Moscow, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, which also hasn't posted since April. Maria Dubakova and also the Russian embassy in Belarus, RT, Rupli, the Ministry of Natural Resource and Ecology, also hasn't posted since April. How about Europe? How about all of Europe? And I'm not just talking about NATO nations, I'm talking about everything. Every Ministry of Foreign Affairs of every country in Europe or the Middle East, to include, you guessed it, the World Food Program in Syria, which is run by the United Nations. That's fair. But also, how about the government of Pakistan? That's not NATO. How about the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad? How about the Russian embassy in Syria? How about the UN Special Envoy? How about the Ministry of Saudi Arabia? How about Press TV, which is an Iranian news channel? The Ministry for Armenia, the Ministry of Defense for Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Israel, once again Kazakhstan, Asia Pacific. I have also the spokesman of the Chinese. I also have the spokesman of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs here for you. The Chinese mission to the UN, the Fiji Foreign Affairs, India, Japan, Xinhao News, which is a Chinese-run state news organization, the Sri Lankan government, Africa, which we're still expanding our sources. Keep in mind, this isn't a complete list. I haven't added everything that we have. And this also doesn't include all of our private sources. Rwanda, Botswana, the African Union. So, this tells you, and this is all North America for you guys. So, once again, Shanklu, this is just, this is not the complete list. This is our sources. And I have a lot of first-hand sources. This doesn't include the fact that we all have here at the channel, we all have professional emails, like actual emails, and I have reached out to the Russian embassy. I have reached out to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I have reached out to a lot of governments personally, as I am aware that other people have as well, to get a lot of this information. So if you have some sources that I do not have that may differ from this, I please encourage you, you can jump on Discord and you can get in touch with me personally or not, and you can actually send me some of these sources. I'll be willing to take a look at them and kind of go through them myself and kind of corroborate them with other official sources that we have, just as we do with the rest of the news. But with that, thank you. And as we get ready to wrap up the rest of the night here for you guys, we come down here to Georgia, where we see a 1.8 million year old tooth was found. So the archaeologists have been found in Georgia, or have found in Georgia, a 1.8 million year old tooth belonging to an early species of humans, basically, which they say cements the region as the home of one of the earliest prehistoric human settlements in Europe, possibly anywhere outside of Africa.
The implications for that, not just for this site, but for Georgia itself, and for the story of humans leaving Africa 1.8 million years ago. The implications are enormous. It extends human occupation in this area from Dmanisi all the way over to here, and it really solidifies Georgia as a really important place for paleoanthropology and the human story in general.
So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's some pretty big history, as most of the oldest human, the oldest like signs of humanity actually come from Africa. To see something that old coming out of Georgia, that far in the north, is a very telling sign. As we jump down here to Dubai, we also see that Dubai is building a moon-shaped resort. Dubai, Moon Dubai, a $5 billion USD destination resort in the form of celestial body, could arrive in Dubai as proposed by Canadian architectural company and intellectual property licensor Moon World Resorts Incorporated. Proposed and co-founded by Sandra G. Matthews and Michael R. Henderson, the moon-shaped resort is designed to be built in 48 months. It will have an overall height of 735 feet or 224 meters and is predicted to bring in 2.5 million guests annually. When constructed, Moon Dubai is expected to add to the Emirates' economy in sectors such as hospitality, entertainment, attractions, education, technology, the environment, and space tourism. You can see that is the proposed layout of Moon Dubai. And if you would like to have any more information on that, you can see, you can go and check out the www.architecturaldigest.in. And so with that, another porn bot. Wow. They really are determined with this stream tonight, guys, to make sure that this thing gets demonetized, aren't they? Well, it's not like we're worried about monetization. So have fun with that. Just don't get me banned off YouTube. But that is actually it for the news throughout the world. I'm sorry if I've had a few diversions throughout the night, as there's obviously been some hot topics that have been discussed, and there's a thing. There's this thing. It's called the dangers of misinformation. I wrote an article on it. It's on our website if you want to go check it out. It's called the dangers of misinformation. The dangers of misinformation is the fact that there's an information war going on between adversaries, whether there's a hot conflict or not a hot conflict throughout the world. And it's the point of it is it's either to generate a narrative which, portrays you in a way to garner support, or in a way that it undercuts the narrative of whoever your opponent happens to be. Whenever you're talking about news and whenever you're talking about a hot topic, controversial situation where there's very strong emotions on both sides, you need to be wary regarding misinformation. Obviously, here on the channel, we have a very clear bias for Ukraine. And while we do try to maintain an unbiased, and a apolitical point of view in many ways, and I will not say that we're perfect, the fact of the matter is that we have a very open and it's in a very open and a very blatant bias for Ukraine. And I think that needs to be stated again, as we've grown quite a significant amount. I want to say that there is a big bias on this channel for Ukraine. The reason being is that there is no, with any kind of a moral compass, way that I could support the Russian Federation. I have done an immense amount of research, as have myself, not just myself, but this entire team, regarding the war. And we check Russian sources, we check Ukrainian sources, we check international sources, we check the United Nations, we check with China, we check with everybody. Once again, that's just a list because I honestly haven't had time to put everything on there to, I haven't had time to put everything on there to keep up with it all. The thing is that when you see enough of this footage, because keep in mind, here on the channel, you see 10 to 25% of all the footage that we are seeing on a nightly basis, because most of it's just too graphic, too horrific to show on a stream on YouTube. It just is. And it's not something that I think it needs to be shown. This isn't a gore channel. It's not what we're about. What we're about is trying to understand these situations, inform you on the situation, wherever it happens to be, give you the facts as best as we can deliver them, correct it when we have mistakes, and it is to help people. Because overall, we're trying to inform you on what's happening throughout the world, so that way you can make better decisions with what's happening throughout in your own life, so you have an understanding of what the main things are. And I would like to make sure that this stays on topic and stays where we are trying to help people throughout the world with whatever situation they may be going through. The fact of the matter is that there is no reason Ukraine needed to be invaded to begin with. Ukraine doesn't maintain nuclear weapons. Ukraine is not part of the National Socialist Party of Germany or the Nazi Party. They are not anything. They are a sovereign, independent nation with borders defined by when they were accepted into the United Nations. That is the fact of the matter on this, and that alone tells you about what needs to be done. It's not war of anti-terrorism. There is no Nazis to denazify anymore. That ended with World War II. It's very telling, a lot of things that is said. While we don't necessarily like to report on these things all the time, I mean, it's what needs to be said. It's what needs to be done. So, if you can, please be sure to check out the video description below, and to help people throughout the world, whether that be in Ukraine, whether that be in Somalia, whether that be in Southeast Asia, whether that be in the United States, whether that be anywhere in the world that is, needing help. I mean, that's the whole point of this. Charity. To raise money, to help people, to put a little bit good back into a world that has been pretty shattered by darkness. So I hope that you guys can help us continue and support that endeavor, if nothing else. Regardless of how you feel about the viewpoints, that's your opinion, and that's okay. But I do want people to help. So if you go and check out the description below, you're going to see a bunch of those organizations. And if you can, please be sure to, if you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, it's okay too. Be sure to, like and subscribe. Let your friends know about us. Share us on your communities. You can follow us on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram and everything else, and share our stuff on there. But the more people that come here and watch, the more of an impact that we will have overall on the people whose lives are so seriously affected by war and climate change and famine and everything else. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get off my soapbox for the night, everybody. I hope that you guys have enjoyed, and even if you didn't enjoy, I at least hope that you found it knowledgeable. And I hope that you guys will join us later. If you have more organizations, you can jump onto our Discord. Or if you just want to hang out with a pretty cool community that we have there, you can jump onto our Discord and you can join us there and talk and chat and laugh at some memes and get into some really good discussions regarding everything. Once again, if you have anything that could be useful when it comes to sources-wise, I'd be more than willing to listen. And if you have another organization for charity, as we are currently vetting several, I think I got about 4 or 5 right now, that were actually submitted by the community, by you guys. I would love it if you guys sent that over to a staff member or myself, or just onto the Discord, and we will hopefully be able to actually get that vetting process started. So thank you very much, everybody, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. My name is Paul from the New News, and have a fantastic rest of your night, everybody. Bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляти в головах, і чутно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТРО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуємо. Тут для них нема нічого, крім труни. Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляти в головах, і чутно кличе діти нахуй. тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бочок, вам не взять нас и за 100 тысяч лет. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляду вам на вахи, і чутно кличі, діти нахуй, хто працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Mr. Putin, on behalf of all our guys, no one's scared of your nuclear device. You can take your top 11, shove it up your wrinkled bum. I will come and help you fit it in your skull.
Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляду вам на вахи, і чутно кличі, діти нахуй, хто працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляду вам на вахи, і чутно кличі, діти нахуй, хто працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляду вам на вахи, і чутно кличі, діти нахуй, хто працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Gone home, Russian soldiers, gone home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стріляду вам на вахи, і чутно кличі, діти нахуй, хто працює ЗСУ і ТМО.
Идите нахуй!